Ang ating online program ay magsisimula sa loob ng ilang minuto.
Rizal Park, Luneta. Isa itong mohon, isang bantayog, isang landmark. Mga kaibigan, mayaman man o mahirap, taga-probinsya man o taga-Maynila, Pilipino o dayuhan, dito pumupunta upang mamasyal, magsaya, magpalakas, magdiwang. Ito po ang pinaka-importanteng parke sa kasaysayan ng bansa. At sa maraming pagkakataon, dito tayo nagkaroon ng kabayanihan, trahedya, pagkilos, pagdiriwang, at pagsasaya bilang isang bansa. Ang Maynila ang kabisera ng Pilipinas. Pero ang Rizal Park Luneta ang puso ng Republika. Makasaysayang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si 𝘱𝐿 𝐶₂, isang public historian. Samahan niyo po ako sa Rizal Park Luneta walking tour.
Ang proyektong ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism. Bago natin simulan ng ating programa, mayroon lamang kaming kaunting paalala para sa mga manunood. Una, ang ating online program ay mapapanood ng live sa ating Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Magiging available ito on demand pagkatapos ng ating live discussion. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ang webinar na ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media. Ikalawa, nais naming marinig ang inyong mga komento at makita ang inyong mga reaksyon sa live discussion. Para sa Zoom participants, kung kayo ay may mga tanong para sa ating speaker, maaari ninyo itong iparating sa amin sa pamamagitan ng Q&A button na matatagpuan sa ibabang bahagi ng inyong screen. Para naman sa ating mga viewers sa Facebook, maaari ninyong i-comment ang inyong mga katanungan sa live video na ito. Sisikapin naming masagot ang lahat ng inyong katanungan sa nakatakdang oras. Panghuli, ang mga makakakompleto lamang sa pagsagot ng ating online survey form ang makakatanggap ng copy ng kanilang digital certificate. Kaya abangan po ninyo sa chat box at comment section ang online survey link na aming ipopost. Paki-review po ang inyong entry details, lalo na ang inyong pangalan, bago i-click ang submit button. Dahil ito po ang aming ilalagay sa inyong digital certificate. Iyon lamang po ang ilang mga paalala.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Welcome sa ating 41st webisode ng Park Conversations na pinamagatang The Art of the Short Film. Ako si Mia Lauengco, ang inyong host para sa ating Park Conversations ngayong umaga. Ang special webisode na ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism bilang bahagi ng ating pagdiriwang sa National Arts Month. The month of February is the National Arts Month, under Proclamation Number 683, Series of 1991. The celebration aims to conserve, promote, and popularize our historical and cultural heritage and resources, as well as artistic creations. To culminate this celebration, we are holding a special Park Conversations webisode focusing on the discipline of filmmaking. With this, it is my honor to welcome and introduce our speaker for this episode. Our guest speaker is Ms. Rianne Soriano. Ms. Rianne Soriano is a director, producer, and writer working in independent films and commercial or corporate productions. She is also a part-time film educator. She is a fellow of the Busan International Film Festival's Asian Film Academy 2009 and the Korean Film Council's Asian Film Professionals Training Program 2008 in Busan and Seoul, Korea. She co-authored the Korean Film Council's Asian Film Industry Book, published in South Korea in 2010. She is also the writer of the 𝘠𝑬₂ comics with augmented reality component through the Innovation Grant 2021 of the Cultural Center of the Philippines. The said comics adaptation also has a short animated film rendition through a grant from the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. In the United States, she won the Las Vegas Filmmaker of the Year at the Indie Arts Awards 𝘠Awards. She is a First Friday Las Vegas artist and was a Yahoo Movies Featured Critic Award finalist. In the Philippines, she is a laureate of the Ani ng Dangal or Harvest of Honor Award for Cinema by the NCCA. She received the Kodak Film Award for her thesis film at the University of the Philippines Film Institute. She also received a 𝘍𝑜𝑑 nomination for the Best Short Film Award. In Korea, she is a director, writer, fellow, and trainee of the Korean Film Council. Dear participants, let us all welcome our guest speaker for this episode, Ms. Rianne Soriano. Ms. Rianne, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Ayan, so maraming salamat Mia sa introduction, and sana po ay may matutunan kayo sa ating discussion for today. So let me just share my screen. Hang on. There. So all right. So for this morning's session, this is what we'll expect. So we will first have a film screening of a 6-minute short film, and then we will discuss concept and story development. After that, storytelling and audiovisual form. So we will be discussing particularly, of course, short filmmaking. And then after that, the floor will be open for Q&A. All right. So for now, let us first watch the film. It's a Korean short film. So meron namang subtitles. So let me just make sure that the sound is going to play. All right, so I hope it works. Pag may technical issue from your end, kindly tell me so that we can start over again, okay?
젠, 야, 그게 그렇게 재밌어? 내 말도 안 듣나 봐.
아싸!
차라리 나보다 이거 기계랑 사겨라.
왜 이래? 내가 잘못했다니까.
이거 놔!
내가 잘못했다고. 들어가자.
우리 그만 만나. 다시는 나타나지 마.
내가 잘못해서 한 번 봐줘. 봐줘. 들어가자.
저기 가.
왜 이래 진짜. 들어가자니까. 내가 잘못했어. 다시 안 그럴게. 들어가자. 가자고.
다
All right, so let me go back to the presentation. So we will start with the discussion of that film in order to apply how short filmmaking is generally done. Okay, so yeah. So we're done with this. So it's a 6-minute short film. Some people tend to describe it as techno romance, and when I heard the term, which is a way to describe it as a subgenre, yeah, I think it's very apt with what the film is all about. So this was produced in Korea a long time ago. Baka yung iba sa inyo, sobrang bata pa. That was shot, I think October. Yeah, October 2008. And yeah, it's 2022 now. It's been a long while. All right, so what is the story all about? One thing that I'm also a teacher, so one thing that I tell script writing students is that or even for production classes, any film, whether the film is 1 minute long or the film is 3 hours long or even 12 hours long, every film should be you should be able to summarize in one sentence. You have to distill it to its very core, and you really know where to focus. So, kesyo mahaba siya na 12 hours or 1 minute lang, or in this case 6 minutes lang, dapat kaya nyong sabihin yung one sentence summary, sometimes also called the log line. Madalas yun yung nilalagay sa mga film festivals na parang summary ng film, ganyan. Of course, there are always variations of how to say this one sentence summary or log line. But for instance, coming from me as the one who made the film, maybe I can provide you two, and definitely some of you can also try to provide his or her one sentence summary, kasi it can be said in different ways. So for example, one is the one sentence summary of that film we just watched is: a boyfriend who is addicted to games tries to win back his fed up girlfriend but fails. So this is something that you could probably see in IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, yung mga ganon, because hindi siya sort of spoiler. You know that there's a conflict, there are characters, there's something that happens to them, there are things that they were doing, but you don't preempt what's gonna happen in the end, especially in this type of film, which is not naman very lack of a better term, realistic, diba? What happens to the guy in the end. So another way of saying it is perhaps a game addict boyfriend tries to win back his fed up girlfriend, but his mechanical efforts turned him into a robot. This is also valid coming from me, although I'll go for the first one because this one kind of spoils something in the end. So yun, it really depends. If it's like something that you don't want to be preempted, then you go for the first one. So it's really that. It's a boyfriend-girlfriend encounter in a sort of a coffee shop, and something happened. Ganun lang siya ka-simple kasi it's 5 minutes. It's actually 5 minutes plus 1.5 minute credits. So, and I really wanted it to be 5 minutes long. Although, yun nga, tama naman, naging 5 minutes talaga. Although it became over 6 minutes because of the credits. So, how did it all start? Let's pretend that we're in Korea, 2008. So that was a shot of the subway, although in a different time, but it's something that I shot before. So that's the subway, and let's pretend that there's no film yet. It just so happened that I was there for a training program, and it's not something that I really wanted to produce. And then when I went inside, tumingin ako sa kanan, konti na lang tao noon because that was around 10 p.m. Pagtingin ko, I saw part of my film somehow. The three girls, yung iPod girls, hindi iPad, kundi, ewan ko kung inabutan niyo, yung iPod, iPod, kasi yun yung uso that time. So, madalas, yung mga tao may nakakabit. Hindi pa nga uso masyado ang Bluetooth, yung mga earbuds noon. So, ganun lagi, matahimik, tapos walang masyado nag-uusap, lalo na kung mga kasing age ko. Kasi may TV na yung cellphone sa Korea that time, and HD na, nag-start na sila mag-HD rin nun sa television, ganyan. So, medyo nauna sila, and me coming from the Philippines, no? So, napansin ko yun. During that subway ride, pagtingin kong ganon, it felt really creepy. Talagang medyo tumaas yung balahibo ko. Parang, ang weird, mukha silang robots. Parang ganun yung nasa isip ko noon. So remember, wala pang film noon. So something kind of struck me. So the spark of an idea came from there na parang gusto kong gumawa ng something. Gusto kong gumawa ng pelikula based from that experience. Kasi yun nga, I saw people acting like robots. Na, yun yung visuals na nakita ko using their cell phones and iPods. So yun yung spark of idea. And then with that, syempre, nandun pa ako sa subway, there was a striking realization. So again, that was year 2008. And yung striking realization in my head while I was bumabiyahe, mapapansin nyo, pag bumabiyahe kayo, hindi lang for filmmakers, storytellers, but you will notice whether kayo ay nagdadrive, nagko-commute, nasa aeroplano, o basta naglalakad, mapapansin nyo yung mind natin minsan naglilinger, tapos may parang bright ideas along the way, na parang may bumubulong sa atin. Minsan nga, like ako, alam pag drive o nagko-commute na sa aeroplano, pag hindi mo siya sinulat, wala kang journal, di mo nilagay yung keywords sa cellphone, nakakalimutan mo siya. And one thing that I learned from some of my mentors, sabi nila, may theory na ang reason for that is, it's because, kaya mo siya madaling makalimutan, it's the same concept as dreams. Ang dreams parang somehow your subconscious or even your unconscious, deep inside you is talking to you. So there's some sort of very genuine, sincere. Kasi iba yung conscious mind. Ang conscious mind nga kasi conscious, di ba? We tend to filter things here and there. Ito, nanggagaling doon. Kaya pag after a while, nakakalimutan mo siya kasi hindi siya galing sa conscious mind. So that's a theory na I kind of sort of subscribe to also. So, yung time na yon, sabi ko, hindi ko pwedeng makalimutan to. So, nilagay ko siya sa cellphone ko. Para lang to make sure I don't forget it. Kasi we tend to forget. I'm sure you had your own experiences of sort of bright ideas while you are, nasa biyahe. So, in my case, yun, nasa subway ako. So, ang striking realization ko noon was, we're being enslaved by technology. There are interactions that time pa, 2008, were already being altered. Our relationships were becoming more and more mechanical and superficial. So one thing I learned also, kasi tatlo kami noon yung sa training program, one from India, another from Vietnam, and ako. So we started around May yata or June 2008. So syempre, all girls pa kami noon. So chika-chika talaga, pagka nasa subway, medyo maingay kami, yung parang share ng mga bagay. Tapos nung October na, actually hindi, mga September or August pa nga lang yata yun. Napansin ko na hindi na kami nag-uusap after a few months. Yung parang lahat kami nakaganon na rin, parang yung iPod girls, so gawa gano'n. So, parang na-imbibe namin, nakapag-assimilate kami dun sa kung ano yung nakikita namin sa paligid. Na instead na magkwentuhan kami tungkol sa countries namin, ganyan, parang hindi na kami nag-uusap, parang magkakasama lang kami, tapos ganyan lang. Yun nga, parang feeling ko mukha na rin kayong robot. So parang ang creepy nung dating sa akin. Siguro yung impact nun, parang me as a storyteller, I just wanted to express that. Because yun nga, parang we look like robots. And to be honest, it hasn't really changed. In fact, it has gotten, I feel like it's gotten worse. That some of you may be able to relate to this, especially pre-pandemic. Actually, even during the pandemic, the dynamics has changed, pero ganun pa rin naman. Pre-pandemic, family gathering on a Sunday, nasa restaurant, lahat naka-cellphone, naka-ganyan, naka-iPad, hindi rin nag-uusap, nawala, nag-iba yung dynamics. So sabi ko, wait lang, parang technology na ba yung nagko-control sa atin? Parang ganun. So it's something very emotional for me, na there's something, things have changed. And to the point na parang feeling ko relationships are being altered. Ayun. So, because of that striking realization, I said I want to make a film. It's not gonna be easy because I'm not in my comfort zone. First, I'm not living in my own country. Wala yung cinematographer ko. Wala akong comfort. Wala akong security blanket somehow. Kasi iba yung, alam niyo yan, pag may gusto kayong trabahuhin, yung katrabaho nyo, gusto nyo, yung team that you trust, di ba? Nakasama nyo na ng matagal. In this case, I have to set certain parameters because I know I'm building things from scratch. I don't even have my my friends there. I only have friends who I just met for a few months. So, and it's not part of the funding for my training. It's really outside. So, but I just thought that there's a way because I wanted it. So first I have to set the parameters. So I need something. There's a need for me to film something that's short and striking. So out na sa akin yung 20-minute film. Kasi alam ko, napakahirap nun to think na hindi ko alam, baka mamaya mag-isa lang akong gumawa nito o yung mga kasama ko, yung mga interested friends who are not, hindi naman professional sa filmmaking, ganyan. Wala pa talaga. Pero sabi ko, let's try. So, there's a need for a story that wouldn't require professional actors. Easy yon for me kung nandito ako sa Pilipinas. Pero I'm not in the Philippines. So, I was not in the Philippines. So, ayun, I need to find accessible actors and actresses. Remember, wala pang kwento. Hindi pa yung film na yun. Wala pa. So, of course, I have to be practical. I said, I doubt na makakuha ko madali ng seniors. Kung halimbawa seniors, unang-una may language barrier na nga. Tapos pag masyado naman bata, ganun din. Ang hirap din naman na yung intricacies of communicating with kids. Tapos hindi ako marunong mag-Korean, di ba? So, out na rin. So, I go for my age. So, young adults. Tapos sabi ko, pwede kong itap possibly yung mga kakilala ko. And then, there's also that need for something that can be shot within my means and resources. I wasn't working that time. I was already working in the Philippines, but I had to, since it was a scholarship program, I had a stipend naman. But of course, you know, I have to eat. I have to sustain myself. So, hindi rin naman enough yun na yung ganun kalaki yung pwede kong ma-produce na pera para makapag-shoot. So, one thing na inisip ko, kailangan shooting location should be one lang. Kasi, syempre, magre-renta ako ng truck or ng van, or tapos dadalhin ko yung mga tao, so may gas. So, paglilipat-lipat pa, it's not gonna be easy for me. And again, I don't have my production manager. I mean, ayun, so wala talaga ako security blanket. Tapos, medyo nakakatakot siya, pero exciting din at the same time. Parang siyang adventure. So, reasonable production budget dapat. I know that I will shell out some money, but I know I can only shell out that much. I need minimal art requirements only. Yung tipong sila magdadala ng damit at hindi ko sila papahirapan. Dadala ng bag, sabihin ko lang yung anong preferred kong kulay, etc. Yung mga gadgets, existing na rin. So, lahat ng mga art requirements. Sabi kung may cellphone, may ano. Kasi parang doon nag-ugat yung story about technology. So, I know there should be some sort of art requirements ng mga gadgets. Yung mga laptop, DSLR, etc. So, I also thought na, of course, okay, anong kwento? So, in filmmaking, even in script writing, it's always a decision-making process. So, you have a general idea in your head. You know that it will tackle something about relationship, because my striking realization was that this technology is already altering our relationships, our how we interact with people. And this is happening socially talaga, not just in small circles, but you know, in general. Sabi ko, sige, ano bang klaseng relationships? Marami. Romantic, family relationships, friendship, etc. Alam ng karamihan sa film, no, na hindi naman sa sinasabing pinakamadali siya, pero mas accessible siya, lalo na kung mabilis ang kwento. So sabi ko, baka humaba yung kwento pag family, you have to incorporate different people, maraming tao. Sa friends, pwede namang dalawa, BFFs, pero feeling ko masasabi ko ng mabilis kung romantic relationship. So, okay, fine, sige, romantic relationship. So, what's gonna happen? Of course, in a story, sabi nga nila, hindi yan magiging kwento kung walang conflict. So, ano yung conflict? Pwedeng nag-away, nagkapatayan, di ba? O kaya, end of the world, di ba? Ayun. So, in this case, sabi ko, romantic, malamang nag-away, either nag-away or nag-break. So, you see, dahil dun sa mga parameters na sineset ko, unti-unti, nagkakaroon ako ng kwento, nabubuo yung kwento because I'm asking myself certain questions na requiring decision making. So, romantic ba? Family ba? Friends ba? Friendship? Ganyan. breakup story or nag-away lang sila, paano ba? Yan. So, ngayon, during that time, I remember at some point, I was eating dinner together with my, parang dorm kasi yun. So, bukas yung TV. Tapos parang 7 o'clock PM news sa Pilipinas. May ganun din sa Korea. Tapos, may news report about a guy. Siguro tumatak din sa akin yun kasi medyo related eh. So, a guy literally died because of non-stop playing of video games. So, addict na addict siya sa games. Hindi na kumakain, napapabayaan sarili, probably hindi na naliligo. Bumagsak na lang bigla. Tapos, yun, na news. So, parang ako, oh my God. Ayun, so, naalala ko siya. So, you see, bits and pieces of your life makes stories that you craft na mas nagiging sila, genuine, para nagkakaroon sila ng sincerity kasi it's coming from real life. So, of course, this is fictional story and that won't happen in real life na literally maging robot yung boyfriend. Pero, by making a stand based on these things, no, yung creative, yung using of film language, you can somehow, some way, do something like this. And another parameter is, yun nga, so aside from, dapat about relationship, okay, so na-trim down ko na, okay, break up. Okay, so mag-aaway sila. Ngayon, poproblemahin ko na lang, paano sila mag-aaway? Yan, tapos dapat 5 minutes lang. And then, another thing is setting. So, obviously dito may conflict, may characters. Yung setting, saan ba usually pwede? Ang una ko talaga naisip was coffee shop. In fact, the longest process that happened when I was doing pre-production was yung paghahanap ng location. Napakahirap. Kasi nga, yun, wala ako sa Pilipinas. I had to really, talagang sinuyod ko yung buong Seoul. Kasi napaka-accessible naman ng subway nila. So, lahat ng kulay ng subway nila, nag-ride ako. Parang, punta lang dito, punta dyan. Tapos, tatambay ako, titingin ako ng mga coffee shops. Napansin ko, karamihan ng coffee shops, even sa Hongdae, yan, sa Gangnam, ang mga nakita ko, unang-una sa lahat, medyo mas more on rustic. Ang gusto ko, hindi man siya sci-fi, medyo sci-fi yung dating, yung very sterile. So, sabi ko, ano ba ito? Tapos, ang ironic, kung saan ako unang tumambay, nung dumating ako doon, sa Korea University yon, sa 3rd floor yon eh. Sa ilalim nun, mini-stop. So, di ba, yung sa scene, merong elevator. So, baba nun, mini-stop. Doon din ako pumagsak. Sabi ko, teka lang, ba't pa ako lumalayo? Parang ito bagay na to, kinunan ko ng picture, pinag-aralan ko. Sabi ko, pwede na to. Oo nga, okay ito bagay ito, ba't di ko naisip? But anyway, okay na rin kasi nakapagliwaliw na ako. Nalibot ko yung iba't ibang coffee shops around. So, pagdating ko sa nagsulat ako ng letter, total estudyante ako doon, pumayag, awan ng Diyos pumayag for free. So, gawin lang na Sabado yata yun or Linggo, I forgot. So, yun. Kasi I needed a students hangout place. Basta, yun nga, ang nahanap ko, yun, yung doon sa Korea University kung saan ako nag-aral. So, sabi ko, sige, dito na. So, one location. So, now, next is, okay, so I have a general story. Ngayon, sino yung actors? Lahat ng mga actors na yun, combination of yung mga kaklase ko sa Korean film language sa Korea University kasi para accessible, hindi ko na sila dadalhin doon. Kaya na nila pumunta doon. Yung iba, yung mga na-meet ko mula sa iba't ibang mga activities namin doon, events. Tapos sabi ko, I just want to make sure may at least isang Filipino. si Gino, yung Filipino doon, yung Nintendo DS yata, yun yung ganun. Kasi yung mukha Pilipino doon lalaki na close up. Yun, sabi ko, para may isa naman na Filipino. Kasi halo-halo, may doon, may Taiwanese, Japanese, American, of course, Koreans, ano pa ba? May iba pang mga, mga from different countries. Kasi nga parang international language program yung sa pinag-aaralan namin na in-enroll ako sa Korea University. So, kumbaga, yung mga friends ko, alam na filmmaker ko. Nung sinabi ko, would you want to, yeah, sure, ganyan. Sige, okay. Ayan, so, puro young adults. So, sabi ko, anong gagawin ko sa kanila para ma-maximize ko sila? So, doon napunta sa, okay, coffee shop. Sila yung mga tao sa coffee shop. Now, how will the story unfold? Paano ko sila may-utilize? So, sabi ko, okay, pwedeng isa-isa sa kanila may gadgets. So parang gearing towards my striking realization. So the need for a story that should address my striking realization on people's use of technology. So yun nga, I wanted to feature various gadgets people typically use. And one thing that I was so lucky na na-realize ko, especially now that it's been more than 10 years, buti na lang hindi ako nag-focus doon sa gadgets. If you notice, yung mga shots ko focus sa mga tao. Kasi unang-una, wala pang iPad noon. So, somehow, kung nag-focus ako puro close-up ng mga gadgets, I have a feeling that it will make the film readily dated. Parang pagka-obsolete, yung parang, ay, alam mo matagal na to. So, dahil hindi ako nag-focus doon yung kahit old school yung cellphone, hindi masyado napansin, even yun sa DSLR. So, sabi ko, it was a good call. So, buti na lang. So, anyway, dahil doon, nakagawa ako ng first draft ng screenplay. Pero, alam ko, marami pang pagdadaanan yun. There's no such thing na first draft, tapos isushoot mo na. At you can be assured na it's the best screenplay that you will ever make. There's always a room for improvement. Kahit ka pa, film master na, people revise, and it's a normal process, normal in a creative process. So in this case, it took about 10 revisions kasi yung first draft ko, sabi ko hindi to 5 minutes, mga 15 minutes to kasi meron pang scene na lumabas siya dun sa location, tapos since may nakaganon, puntik na siya masagasaan. May mga ganon pa akong naisip nung una. Syempre ano yun you just let the flow, yung whatever's in your head. Minsan mas mabilis yung utak kesa sa kamay pag nagta-type. So, type lang ng type. Minsan nga, alam mo pa, may wrong grammar, ganyan, deadma. Kasi yung flow mawawala yung flow pag hindi ka nakasabay. So, yun, mga 15 minutes yung tensya ko doon. Tapos I had to trim it down. And then, I met someone from Korean Academy of Film Arts. So, may dinala ko ng coffee doon. Sa actual shoot, may nag-shoot. So, pinakilala ko, tapos yung mga nakilala ko doon, sila yung mga nakatrabaho ko, including my DP or my cinematographer. So, nung pinabasa ko yun sa cinematographer, kasi during that time, yung coordinator ko sa 𝐭𝐡𝐞, Korean Film Council, sabi nila, this is interesting, maybe we can shoot it. Ako kasi parang half-hearted lang, parang I want to show this to you, I want to shoot this, but I don't know, maybe some friends who can help me out. Sabi, bakit di mo na lang daan sa 𝐭𝐡𝐞? So, pumunta kami ng 𝐶AFA. So, sa 𝐶AFA, kasi parang film school, may pagkaano siya, may pagka-Mowell Fund type na school, talagang hands-on. So, may gamit sila. So, pagpunta ko doon, pumayag. Pumayag sila na, sige, pairamin ka namin. Ang caveat lang nun, P2 camera, yung early HD versus mag-film ako, 16mm. Meron sila ARRI SR2. Yung SR2 kasi, it's relatively old. Hindi siya makakabitan ng video assist. Silip talaga. Sisilip ka sa viewfinder. Tapos gulatan pagkalabas ng film, kung merong kitang tablet, etc. Nagkataon, sanay ako doon kasi yung training ko sa UPFI. Ganon din, kasi thesis ko ganon din, old camera, tapos silip-silip, wala kang video assist. So sabi ko, sige, I'll go for that. Kasi mapapansin nyo, yung shot nung iPod girls, masyadong malakas yung araw sa likod. Pag nag-P2, sabog yun. So either mag-expose ako doon para hindi siya sabog, hindi siya wash out. Tapos maitim, dark yung tatlong girls. Or well-exposed yung tatlong girls, sabog yung labas, para ka na sa heaven. So, sabi ko, hindi kaya, magsi-16mm ako. So, kaya kami nag-16, tapos tinelesine, transferred, digitized, and then we edited it digitally. So, that was a 6-minute short, and this is how short the script is. The reason being, halos walang sinabi. The start lang. Tapos walang masyadong dialogue. So, that's why medyo maigsi yung screenplay. So, screenplay is just almost 2 pages. Ayun. Okay, so we move on to the director's treatment. This is one thing that is being taught in production classes, no? So, pag sinabi mong director's treatment, this applies whether for short film or full-length film. So, ikaw as a filmmaker, as a director, you have a vision. How do you want to approach that story? So, the story involves a quarrel between two lovers, and then parang nagsasorry yung isa. Ang nangyari was sila ay nag-away dahil nga addict sa games, yung isa hindi pinapansin yung isa. So, has something to do with relationships. So, how do I want to approach it? Anong look? So, I wanted it na, I had this keyword, no? Keywords, human factory. Parang gusto ko magmukha siyang factory. So, ang approach is not completely realistic, kumbaga. So, I wanted that the shots should feel mechanical. And the movements of the people should progress na para kang nag-shoot ng factory. Parang nag-shoot ng factory, di ba? Yung factory may gumaganon, may gumaganyan. So, it's like a factory moving as a part of a larger whole. So, yun yung gusto ko. And I discussed this with my cinematographer. So, he suggested what you saw. So, ang nangyari talaga no, naka-dolly. I don't know kung familiar lahat, no? Yung dolly, D-O-L-L-Y. Makikita mo yun pagka yun yung tinutulak yung cinematographer or cam operator, tapos nandun yung of course camera, tapos tinutulak siyang ganyan para mag-track in or mag-track out. So ang ginawa namin, naglagay kami ng pangharang para pagtulak na ganun, literal na tinutulak yun. So para meron siyang gumagano na feeling. So para may sense of parang militaristic, very mechanical. Mapapansin nyo, we opted for a feel na hindi malamya yung shots, very snappy. Para yun yung emotions na gusto kong very mechanical or very yung technology. So, walang curved na shots. Puro front, may konting side, tapos wish pan, track out, mabilisan. Tsaka yung gumaganon. Literal, hindi yun sa edit Yung ganun talaga. Ang pinaka-alteration sa edit was, of course, yung being cut-to-cut siya. Wala naman masyadong transition. Plus yung yung slow-mo, yung pag nagsuslow-mo or nagsispeed ramp, nagsuslow-mo tsaka nagpa-fast motion. Yun yung sa editing lang. Pero yung mga movements, talagang shoot yun as it is. Ayun, so yun yung movements parang part of a larger whole, so each gadget. So we really had to find a way na we utilize the space, tapos paano magsuswish pan from one shot to another. Yun. So the place where the actors and actresses are should look neat and sterile. So yun yung sinasabi ko nga dito. Mapapansin nyo dito sa mga shots na to. Yun, napakaswerte natin ngayon. Kasi ako, even sa cellphone, kaya nang i-shoot yung ganito. During 2008, napakahirap i-shoot yan kung hindi film. Yun yung sinasabi ko, sabog yan. As in, hindi mo makikita yung detalye sa labas. So, yan yung ganito. So, mahirap siya talaga. Ayun. So, buti na lang ngayon, kahit cellphone, kayang-kaya mo. Recently, nakita ko si Park Chan-wook just shot a short film using iPhone 13. And when I checked it, parang, wow, ang ganda. Ibang-iba na yung technology ngayon. Di ba? We're talking about technology and yon technology din ngayon. It's really interesting if you utilize technology in good ways. Ayun. So anyway, just to quickly share this. So stages of film production, usually yung tatlo sa gitna, yung sinasabi, di ba? Pre-production, production, post-production. But for me, it's always good to reiterate the fact that the idea is born not in pre-production. Kasi sa pre-production, you have your Bible already, you have your script already. Meron pang bago yon, di ba? So yun yung story and concept development. And I shared briefly how that film came to be from an idea in my head to how it was shot. Diba? So, yun yung story and concept development. Tapos, dahil doon, magkakaroon ka ng screenplay or ng script. Pag may script ka na at sigurado ka ng yun na yun, o minsan nga kahit post-production na, minsan napapalitan pa ang ibang parts ng kwento, diba? Ayun. So, but anyway, pre-production yun. Yung magsa-start ka na, maghanap ka ng location, maghanap ka ng actors, yung production team mo, gagawin mo lahat yung logistic aspect of production, magkakaroon creative meeting, yung itinerary for the day, one day lang yun sinute. We started around, ang call time was 7 a.m. yata. Ang grind was around 10. We finished by 4. Wala naman kaming choice kasi nga October na yun, madilim na. Sunset na yun, mga 4:30, madilim na. So, awa ng Diyos, natapos naman namin lahat. Ayun, so pre-production, production yon, and then editing. So yung editing, inedit ko yun ng Pasko, hanggang Pasko, as in hanggang December 24. Kasi uuwi na ako ng, I think, parang right before New Year. So minamadali ko na siyang i-edit. Tapos, tinigilan ko lang siya nung malapit na mag-12 midnight. So nag-celebrate kami ng Christmas. So ang kasama ko, it was really wonderful. I was with 2 friends. So tatlo kami, isang Catholic, isang Hindu, tsaka isang Muslim. Tapos together we were having a drink, ganyan. By the way, dun sa shoot, yung lahat ng mga ginastos doon, siguro in Philippine, umabot siguro ng 25K pesos. Pinakamarami sa film stock, mahal ang film stock eh. Yung negative, yung pinakabala, kumbaga yung SD card mo, pero film kasi celluloid. The rest kasi libre na. Ngayon, yung mga tao, ang pinangako ko, syempre dapat ito, lalo na sa short film, dahil alam natin, hindi naman tayo funded the same way as commercial, full-length films. Dapat klaro sa mga tao, hindi pa rin dapat na ine-exploit. No? So, klaro dapat sa tao kung ano yung hinihingi mo sa kanila at ano yung maibibigay mo sa kanila. So, sabi ko, are you all right na ilang won lang yon? Sabi, no, let's just party. Sabi nila, kasi magbigay ka nga naman ng karimpot, masarap kasi mag-party sa Korea. Mga mahilig mag-inom. Ayan, so right after the shoot, 4 o'clock, so uwian para makapag-rest. 7 o'clock, nagpa-reserve ako ng isang bar. Tapos doon ako gumastos, libre lahat ng inumin nila, etc. So, in short, hindi ko sila binayaran. Pero I was very transparent na yun yung gagawin. Tapos we just had fun. So, it was a nice thing. Especially hindi ganun ka-haggard yung shoot. Kasi ang bilis lang ng shoot namin. Tapos hindi naman sila nainitan, di ba? Aircon naman. Tapos winter din noon. So, hindi ganun kahirap. Parang I was very happy and fulfilled to see that I know hindi naman ako kasi syempre, alam mo yun, hindi mo naman sila binayaran. May yun eh, somehow, at the back of your head, minsan may guilt feeling ka, baka, you don't want them to be exploited. So, thank you, ganyan. Tapos, nung nakita ko that we were having fun that night, sabi ko, I think there's nothing to feel guilty about. So, happy naman. So, after ng post-production, of course, tapos na, nag-dub out ka na. Then, it's time to send it to film festival. So, I think around 3 years nag-festival muna siya bago ko I decided to put it in YouTube. Kasi that's available in YouTube now. Kasi ito rin yung isa sa mga, of course, iba-iba to. I know a lot of filmmakers, iba-iba rin yung take. Sa akin kasi, ang short film, pagka natapos na siya, meron yung parang sweet spot na, during the schedule, pwede mo siyang film fest. Sa mga film festivals, medyo yan, ayaw nila lang pinupost mo yan online. So, hindi mo muna po-post online. Kung gusto mo mag-film fest. Yan. So, nung nasaturate mo na kasi relatively old na siya. I mean, actually, old na yun, 3 years bago ko, I think, nilagay sa YouTube, tsaka sa Vimeo. At tsaka sa 𝘵𝘂, kasi na-curate siya sa 𝘵𝘂. After nun, I don't want the film to be buried 6 feet under. It's a story. As a storyteller, I have this inkling na gusto ko mapanood siya ng mga tao. Alam ko hindi siya pakikita ng pera. So, ako rin naman ang may copyright. Walang problema sa copyright. Sabi ko, this is the time na yung mga older films ko, short films ko, ilagay ko na siya sa YouTube. So, nilagay ko siya sa YouTube. So, yun, minsan may mga nakakapanood pa rin, ganyan. So, accessible siya kasi for me, as a storyteller, yun yung end. Hindi naman siya parang yun nga, yung kikita ka, tapos may copyright, etc. Tapos yun, di ba? Buti na lang, akin yung pelikula. So, that's one thing also. Kasi minsan, tricky yan. Because of yung issue with intellectual property, maybe. Although this happens more in full-length films na somebody else will produce it for you, sure. But, for example, meron yan magsasabi na, but we own the film 100% in perpetuity. So, wala ka talagang habol doon, di ba? Whereas, yun nga, pag ganito, na you own the film, you can do anything that you want in the film, di ba? Yan. So, now let's move to making short film. So, I think itong 4 na to is very important, especially nung sinabi ko sa inyo kung paano nangyari dun sa film na yon, no? Elements of cinema and film production techniques. So, ibig sabihin, you have to learn film language. And it's not that hard anymore. You have simple, webinars, you have YouTube, you have a lot of websites na can teach you. We have film schools, we have workshops. Iba rin kasi yung dynamics na meron kang may makakasama ka na ibang like-minded people or Sa film school, iba rin yung approach, talagang mapagtutuunan yung storytelling. Okay? So, yung mga, halimbawa, yung technicals, pwede mo siyang mas madali siyang ma-reach out sa the likes of YouTube, etc. Pero yung sa storytelling, kailangan mo talaga siyang upuan. Isa siguro sa pinakamagandang way para matuto without, relatively additional effort is to really watch films, really good films. You will find the language there and you learn from those. Okay? So, importante that you know the film language. Next, you have to know the managerial and creative aspects of production. So, you know how to balance. Kasi hindi siya ganun kasimple. Yun nga, you have to set the parameters. Gusto mo gumawa ng Star Wars, kaya mo ba? Diba? Ayan. So, leading to concept of perfection versus practicality. Alam mo na one day shoot lang ang kaya mo. Pag pinili mo pang i-perfect ang mga bagay-bagay, hindi mo siya matatapos, you'll fail. So, you do compromises. At you really have to stick to it. And you have to respect kasi collaborative ang film. So, you have an AD, an assistant director who's in charge of, making sure that everything gets shot that day. Dapat talaga, it gets shot that day. Now, fast forward to ngayon, because it's pandemic, minsan halos lahat ng trabaho ikaw yung gagawa. It's very possible because of the yung circumstances. Napaka-challenging nun kasi yun nga yung managerial, logistics, yung administrative side of production, hindi siya ganoon kasimple. Mapakainin mo yung mga tao, sino yung magko-contact ng kung sino yung order, etc. Paano mo sila babayaran, ang daming mangyayari. And usually since undermanned, kailangan talaga, kaya mo yung challenge na yung logistics versus creative, kaya mo. Yung perfection versus practicality, you can handle. You have to take it as a challenge that's positive than parang nasa-stress ka at ayoko na. Kasi pag ganun, medyo mahirap yun sa paggawa ng pelikula because nature talaga ng pelikula yung ganun. Parang it's a beautiful chaos, parang ganun. Or a chaotic beauty, ganun. So, the last, conceptualizing a short form project in audiovisual format. The thing is, magkaiba ang storytelling sa short film versus sa full-length film. In fact, magkaiba ang pwede mong maikwento ng buo sa 20-minuter compared sa 5-minuter or compared sa 1-minuter. I can highly suggest you watch a lot of the Pixar shorts kasi ang dami, iba-iba, may 1-minuter sila, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 12 minutes. Makikita nyo, ano yung mga klase ng tema, ano yung klase ng stories that you can tell in just a short span of time. Magkakaiba sila. Siyempre, mas simple, the shorter it gets. Like ito, hindi ko siya pwedeng, yung film na to, hindi ko siya pwedeng i-complicate masyado kasi mauubos yung oras. Yun. Okay? So, yun. Film, we know, is an audiovisual medium. So, regardless of short siya, full length siya, kung ano mang genre siya, the filmmaker should carefully present expressive audiovisual elements. Nakikita at naririnig. Yun yung difference niya sa, halimbawa sa literature, na binabasa. Kaya pag nagbasa ka sa literature, like short story or novel, pag binasa mo, di ba, may mga flowery words, yung parang mahahaba, hindi ganun sa script. You have to be straight to the point but very detailed and visual and actionable yung gagawin mo. It's not as simple as describing in a sentence in your script saying she is sad. What do you mean by she is sad? Yung she is sad sa akin, tumatalon sa building. Yung isa naglulupasay sa isang one corner. What do you mean? It's vague. So instead of you saying she is sad in a script, you say she's crying in one corner. Therefore she's sad, 'di ba? Parang kahit di mo kailangan mas visual and actionable. Yung sinasabi mo para ma-visualize namin kasi vague yung she is sad or she is happy. So, isa yun sa siguro ma-take nyo na pagka gumagawa kayo ng script for a film, not just for short film. So, since we have limited time, although I'm asking this, you can answer it from your own, on your own lang. So, it's, storytelling daw is king or queen. We want to be here, inclusive. I don't know if you agree. Story is king or queen. Yan. So, babalikan natin yan by the end of the discussion, no? So, I want to remind you that a short film is not a condensation of a long thought to a short thought. Okay? Hindi yung pagpipilitan mo na parang Avengers Endgame na story, tapos gusto mo exactly the same way magiging short film siya. Hindi siya ganun kasimple. Hindi siya by simply condensing na parang kunin mo yung dito, tapos pagsamahin mo, yun na yun. Mahirap yun. Baka hindi maintindihan. Hindi siya ganun kasimple. Therefore, yung mga concepts ninyo, dapat, binabase nyo, yun nga sabi ko, dapat nagsiset ng parameters. Ibabase nyo kung ano yung kayang sabihin lang in a span of 5 minutes. Okay? So, a short film doesn't simply crop or edit out an originally full-length film concept. Kung pang full-length yan, pang full-length yan. Pwedeng kumuha ka siguro, ibabracket mo yung full-length film, instead na yung kabuuan nun, kuha ka lang ng certain portion, ito yung gagawin mong short film. Maybe that's possible, right? But yung to really condense the entirety of it, it's not possible. Okay? May mawawala at mawawala. It's gonna be its own. Yun nga, pwedeng i-bracket, pwedeng umusbong yung idea for a short film from a full-length concept. Pero yung to really parang sama-sama sila na, mahirap yon. And madalas yun yung pinasanayan kasi natin yung full-length film. Kaya ang short film, medyo minsan nagiging struggle sa iba. Kasi ang dami nilang gustong sabihin, you only have so little time. Yun. So, again, dapat, yun nga, emotions translated into the audiovisual medium, emotion, sensation, experience. This is particularly naman for films na hindi ganun ka parang not following the 3-act structure, yung tinatawag natin mga experimental films. So, di-discuss din natin yan mamaya, experimental films. Ayan, so, content and form. So, madalas yan na dinidiscuss sa film school, ganyan. Pag sabi mo kasing content sa pelikula, you're talking about the screenplay. And then, the form is how that content or that screenplay appears on screen. So, there are generally two things that you would like to understand in terms of crafting a film. Yung tinatawag na film language, it involves the content and the form. Okay? So yun, nagsisimula talaga sa content. Parang yung kanina pinakita ko. Tapos nag-decide ka na yung director's treatment mo ay human factory. Parang dun papasok yung form. So the filmmaker should know how to parang present a story in audiovisual terms. And one should carefully present expressive visual elements. Yung katulad ko kaninang sinabi ko na dapat she is happy. Instead of, dapat hindi siya she is happy, kundi she is leaping in joy. So nakita mo, talaga tumatalon siya. Yung ganon, visual talaga siya and actionable. Instead of merely saying she is happy. Yun. Okay? So, ito usually part to ng basics ng film language. Lalo na kung short film na narrative, na madalas na-encounter natin even sa film festivals, mga narrative yung ginagawa. It would be nice to at least know the basics of script writing. Kasi the basis of the work must always be a good dramatic structure. Okay? So, there are narrative and non-narrative approaches to storytelling. But, yung sa non-narrative cinema, may structure din yun. Okay? Parang music. Meron siyang rhythm, di ba? May as an art form, ang pelikula may ganun din, may pulso. Ayun. So, in terms of the narrative film, short film, you have to master the basics of film language first. Para ka nag-aaral mag-play ng guitar. Pag wala kang alam sa guitar, you started holding the guitar unless you're really super duper gifted, na talagang isang ganun mo lang, para ka ng super gifted talaga. Pero usually, ang mangyayari niyan, anong gagawin mo? Maghanap ka ng may mga basic chords. You learn the basic chords first. Tapos, pag gamay na gamay mo na, medyo na-master mo na, you go to the next level, intermediate, you go advanced, hanggang kaya mo nang baliin yung basics. Kasi paano mo babaliin yung basics, hindi ka marunong ng basics? So, master the basics first. Like, for example, itong narrative structure na itinatawag natin na 3-act structure, no? So, yung may exposition, tapos inciting incident, yung conflict, tapos rising action, yun yung mga nangyayari sa gitna, pagitna, hanggang dumating sa climax ng storya, tapos yung ending, or resolution. Yung resolution, dapat ina-address yung problema sa kwento, which is being shown early on sa Act 1, diba? Hanggang Act 3. So, yun yung tinatawag na 3-act structure. So, of course, hindi ko ito madidiscuss too much, no? Because of, this is parang less than an hour. So, you can always Google these things. Okay? Yan. So in terms of short films, we have of course, yun nga, narrative. We have experimental, na yun nga, parang ginagamit mo more on emotions and yung sensation, di ba? And then you have documentaries and you have also animation. So ito yung karamihan, like for example sa Gawad CCP, ito yung mga pwede nyong pagpasukan ng inyong mga short films, di ba? So yan. Okay, so important then na you know the genres. I'm sure you know what genres are. You will mention the horror, the drama, but just to give you a really brief parang awareness of how these genres are categorized. So they are usually categorized under any of these. So for example, based on setting or art direction. So here, the location, sets, and props help define the genre. For example, pag nakakita ka ng crime film, na-identify mo siya na crime film or historical film, like halimbawa yung Goyo or General Luna, tignan mo yung art direction, tignan mo yung location, tignan mo yung suot nila, yung setting, ay, okay, historical film to, ay, war film to, or sports film to, or sci-fi film to. O pagka, ay, parang puro sa mga, yung mga pinupuntahan ng mga teenagers, like clubs, or maybe bahay or school, ay, para siyang teens, tapos puro teens yung characters, mukhang teen movie siya, yan, or parang, ay, western siya. So, makikita mo, habang tinitignan mo yung mga bagay around, location, sets, props, you can identify that it's a certain genre. Okay? Remember also, genres, pwedeng hybrid yan, parang multiple, no? Like, for example, if you watched Her, it's a sci-fi romance drama. Diba? Yun. So, mood, emotions, doon naman base. So, the film's emotional charge helps define the genre. So, for example, you have a comedy film or even action film. Based sa emotion yan, yung parang blood-pumping action, di ba? Yung gano'n. Or natatakot ka, or curious ka, tapos romantic, yung sense of adventure, yung excited ka. Ngayon, pwede naman yan kahit saan hindi siya based on setting and art direction eh. Kasi, mas nananaig yung emotions para ma-define mo yung genre. Eh, pwede naman yung action mangyari sa heaven, pwede sa hell, pwede rin sa Ayala Alabang, pwede kahit saan, pwede rin sa 1950s na Manila. So hindi siya pwedeng katulad ng sa setting art direction. So ito yung mga genres na yun, yung based on emotions kumbaga. Next is based on structure, format. So the film structure or technical elements help define the genre. So for example niyan, of course live action. And then you have animation, ang dami niyan, 'di ba? Iba't ibang klaseng animated films yan. Meron yung old traditional yung the draw, meron din yung sa animation table, merong 2D na parang flash, meron ding 3D na ginawa sa Blender, Maya or sa 3D Studio Max, merong claymation, papercraft animation, etc. etc. And then pwede ring musical kasi based on structure and format may specific siya, even dance film. Pwede mo rin very technical, no? 2D, 3D. Yung typical 2D live action, yun yung talagang kinagis na natin. You have 3D films and I'm sure you know that. Meron nga 4DX, di ba? So, biopic, may specific structure din kasi siya. Yung biopic niyan, pwedeng biopic na romance, biopic na historical. I mean, pwede mong pag-mix-mix, no? Ayan. And then last, target audience. So, to whom the film is intended for. So, this helps define the genre. Like, for example, you have a children's film. It's something that you would probably let your kids watch or kids watch. Pero, pag may kasamang adult, most likely medyo boring kasi it's so simple, ganyan. Kasi meron talaga geared towards children only. Pero you notice, like for example, the more recent Disney films, including Pixar films, more often than not, I see them as family film. So, hindi lang siya children's film, kundi family film. Wherein, kaya niya i-encompass, like ma-appreciate siya ng bata, ma-appreciate din siya ng lolo't lola. I mean, we're talking about Pixar films like Up, diba? Inside Out, yun, mga ganon. Even the Encanto, diba? So, parang na-appreciate siya ng bata, pero ang batanda, may ibang basa sa kanya, hindi siya nalileft out. So, it's more of a family film. And then, of course, you have some pang-adult film na, adult erotic film. So, based on these, so, setting art direction, mood, emotion, structure, format, and then target audience. Okay? So, when making a short film, if you're not very good at for example, the setting, the character is a lawyer and you're not a lawyer or a doctor and you have no much info about hospital setting, etc., you have to research. Research is imperative in anything. Even the likes of psychological, 'di ba? Kailangan nanggagaling pa rin sa totoong buhay. Hindi porket fictional siya, hindi mo na siya i-research. Hindi naman kailangan laging binabase mo sa research but knowing that adds verisimilitude to your story kahit na fictional pa siya. So, yon. Making a short film, you have to make a statement. Yeah, it's good that as a director, for example, you have a director statement. Ano ba yung gusto mong sabihin? Hindi naman ito, aminin natin, merong mga full-length films na for mass consumption na hindi naman talaga nagdidig deep. It's really for entertainment. Now, sure, you can actually do that in any film that you do. But, in short film, unang-una sa lahat, hindi ka naman nag-gear towards kumita. Why are you doing this? Siguro yun yung magandang tanong. Why do you want to make a film? Do you want to make a statement about something? You want this to be an outlet, especially now na ang dami nangyayari sa mundo. Tapos lahat tayo nakakulong, hindi natin ito magawa in person. Ano ba, may gusto ka bang sabihin doon? Ilabas mo siya bilang artist, bilang storyteller, because humans are naturally born storytellers and story audiences. So, make a statement, focus on a clear vision, kasi hindi pwedeng chapsuy na parang nalilis ka ng landas. Lalo na ang short film, dapat mas, siya, kasi sandali lang siya Pagka nagpa-ano ka, ng hindi part ng storytelling, malilito yung audience. Dapat very parang, tahing-tahi. Yon. So, craft, visual, oral, or sound, and rhythmic designs. So, it's really fun to actually discuss this with your colleagues, your collaborators, especially sa creative side, like yung PD tsaka DOP mo, diba? Or even your storyboard artist, etc. Even your makeup artist, diba? Pwede kung anong suot, etc. Ano yung itsura. Yan. So, enhance the storytelling with visual and oral motifs. Mapapansin mo yan, kahit sa full-length film, no? Meron yan mga motifs, yung mga elements na medyo inuulit usually to provide or reinforce certain ideas out of your statement, out of the things that you want to say. So you use this instead of, blurting it out as words. You do it audio-visually. So sometimes you will find ways talaga to add visual and oral motifs. Yan. So siguro magandang example sa oral motifs, like diba, pag narinig nyo yung Star Wars na musical score, alam mo na, diba, parang, tapos makikita mo, meron siyang motif siya, maririnig mo siya kahit sa iba't ibang parts ng film, pero hindi exactly the same as the first one, pero meron kang motif talaga. Sa visuals, ganun din naman, meron din. Ayan, use subtext. You don't have to be literal all the time. You don't have to show everything on screen, because sometimes it's actually nicer and more fulfilling to your audience if you let them fill in the gaps. Meaning, you have to decide, like, do I really need to show these things? Especially sa short film, do I really need to show that part? Maybe mas maganda, huwag ko na siya pakita. Let the people know, di ba? That way, makakagawa ka ng subtext. You can use devices like montage to say something that's not so literal. You go more figurative. And that also leads to using metaphors and symbolisms. Ayun. Okay, so the narrative short film. The short film is closest to poetic form because it requires deft characterization, a compressed narrative style, and something fresh and focused to say. So, a good narrative short needs, una, a limited but evocative setting. Yun nga, sinasabi natin, apart from usually kulang sa budget compared to mas maliit yung budget, mas limited yung resources, you go the minimalist route unless talagang you can do it really grand. So limited but evocative setting, characters engaged in a significant conflict, struggle to do or accomplish, at least one character who develops. So there's a character who develops, however minimally. Something happens by the end of the story, may change. And a resolution or ending that leaves the audience pondering some aspect of the human condition. Yun. So this one, I got this reference, Directing Film Techniques and Aesthetics. It's a book by Michael Rabiger. Yun. So aspect of human condition. Sabi nga nila, ang film daw, fiction. I mean, hindi, for example, ibang usapan pagka documentary. But if it's fiction, sabi nila, film is parang a combination of lies. Kasi they're not true. Hindi naman totoong namamatay yung character, yung actor, ganyan-ganyan. Hindi naman siya totoo. It's all in your head. Tapos kinuwento mo lang. So it's a combination of lies that tells the truth by the end. And what is that truth? Usually, yun yung aspect of human condition. You're telling these lies, these invented thoughts in your head in audiovisual form in order for you to address a certain thing in the world. Yon. So, hindi talaga siya lie na hanggang doon lang. Sinasabi mo, kinakraft mo yung lie para magkaroon ka ng statement sa huli at maintindihan, maramdaman yun ng audience. Okay? Yan. So, every story, like every sequence of events in life, has its own chronology that is significant happenings with a beginning, middle, and end. Okay? So, yan yung 3-act structure na nakita nyo kanina. So, may beginning, middle, and end. Yan yung fina-follow natin. And madalas yan makikita mo sa maraming short films na mapapanood ninyo. Now, they may not, however, be told in that order all the time, which is just when things tend to get interesting. Kasi if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's more, in general, it's more expected, more predictable. Pero pag baliktad mo yan, change mo yung chronology, di ba? Yung order, mas, yung mga taong nanonood, ay wait lang, parang titingin sila, mas makukuha nyo yung kanilang attention. Kasi they need to look more because hindi siya 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, iniba-iba mo. So, merong mga films na tinatawag na meta. Yung tipong kung saan nanggagaling, tapos you kind of make it like a puzzle in your head, but that by the end of the film, mapapagtagpi-tagpi mo sila kahit hindi sila chronological. Diba? Yung iba naman, like may mga films na paatras, o kaya puro flashbacks, mga witnesses, parang Rashomon, ganyan. So, maraming styles, maraming structures talaga. And if it's not that chronological, in general, mas nagiging interesting siya kasi people tend to pay more attention. Now, you have to keep up with their expectations though kasi otherwise, mainis sila pagka hindi na-expect. Like halimbawa, may mga tinatawag tayong do X machina. So yung tipong hindi ganun ka-logical pero yun yung naging ending, matapos lang yung kwento. Usually yon the people find that cheating. Ayun. So, okay, so we're almost done. So I think we have about 6 slides more. Ayan. So the narrative short film. So abridging time and space. So the keyword time and space in the interest of narrative compression. Kasi nga mas compressed talaga siya. Keyword time and space kasi yun yung minamanipulate mo in order to tell the story. Yung sense of time and sense of space, where you put certain things and certain people, and how you edit them together. So, a short film selects, compresses, and juxtaposes materials to intensify meaning, reveal ironies, and achieve brevity. So, yun nga, okay siya. Pero minsan, lalo na kung nagsisimula pa lang, you tend to go for something what you call overcompression. So, yun yung tipong, kasi nga, parang pang full length siya, i-compress mo ng todo para lang mabuo yung kwento, pero the material is really not for short film. It's really for full length. Kaya pag pinilit mo, pilit talaga. So, overcompression carries the danger of distancing the audience from developing intimacy. Yan. Intimacy with personality, situations, and ideas. Parang dinaanan lang. Hindi siya manamnam nung taong nanonood. Hindi siya maka-invest emotionally kasi masyadong mabilis, parang dumaan na ganun lang. Paano ako magkakaroon na I'm rooting for the main character or pag namatay siya, dead ma lang ako. Kasi parang hindi naman ako nakarelate. Yung ganon. Yun yung sa part ng issue ng overcompression. Now, everything should have cause and effect. And this particularly, of course, applies to narrative films. Narrative short films. The type and degree of plotting chosen. So yung may plot structure ka nga, 'di ba? So these are this plotting chosen are bound to reflect your own sense of life's causes and effects. So doon dapat meron pag may nangyari, pag may action, may reaction. And dapat it's creative at the same time logical. If it's not logical or realistic, you have to make sure that the overall film language you apply there will somehow convince people to still suspend their disbelief. Na 'Di ba? Kasi alam namin hindi naman totoo. Hindi siya totoo, pero ba't ka naiiyak? Bakit ka natatakot? Bakit mo kino-cover yung face mo pagka may horror film? Kasi that very moment that you were there watching, you know at the back of your head it's fake, it's not true, and it's just fiction. But that very moment, you accepted it as real. That's why you cry, someone dies. That's why you're so scared. That's why yung iba parang, oh my God, ba't gato yung puso ko? Parang mahihimatay. Parang excited ako, etc. That's how powerful film is. Yon. So, though the film may ardently promote a sense of randomness in life, cause and effect cannot be random in its use in film language. Kasi hindi natin makukonvince yung mga tao, yung manonood. So, it's really a careful balance. No? So, film language and human experience. So, the relationships among shots, angles, characters, environments, all in film language, these are still governed by our common experience of living. So, of course, again, narrative to, hindi siya pang experimental or applying directly to docu, no? Kung ano yung nasa real life, doon nang gagaling. Kaya nga, madalas, kung parts, bits and pieces of you are there in your story, mas madali siyang ikwento at maramdaman ng tao kasi it's very human and that's happened in real life. So, ang key dito is you learn film language and be honest to yourself. Find genuine stories. It doesn't have to be complicated. Start with simple stories, especially pag short film. And that genuine storytelling will really make the film effective for audiences. Yan. So, plot as a frame in which to enact one's intentions. So, when you develop an idea for a film, the type and degree of plotting, yun nga, you choose. Kailangan talaga, yun yung sa cause and effect. So, this is in relation to sinabi kanina, no? So, remember that heavy plotting can really stress the logic. And yun nga, yung sinasabi kong suspension of disbelief. Now, characterization and story. So, each character, minsan isa lang yung character, no, sa short film. Minsan yung character hindi necessarily tao. Diba? Pwedeng hayop, diba? Or sometimes objects. So each character must be true to his or her nature, and the story must be as tight and functional as good cabinetry. Ibig sabihin, talagang well-oiled machine. Hindi yung tipong merong mga parts na may butas, sinasabi natin may mga plot holes, tapos hindi matahe by the end of the story. Mapapansin kasi yun ng mga tao. So, cohesive dapat. Lalo na kung short film, it's relatively easier to handle because of that time, di ba? Mas maigsi siya. And then craftsmanship, that's something that you develop as you, sabi nga nila, to learn how to make a film is to make one. So audiences sense when a film is forcing a development or illegitimately wriggling out of a plot difficulty. Yung parang pilit, yung mga very wooden. So weaknesses in the chain of events disrupt credibility and leave the audience feeling confused or cheated. Or it's really being forced. So dito pumapasok again yung sinabi ko kanina na parang yung mga do-ex machine na stories. Na yung ending parang, okay. Papaganon ka na lang. And it happens sometimes, no? Ayun. So, for narrative yon. Now, really quickly, I want to touch also on the other types of short films. So we have short experimental films. So, yon, an experimental film cannot be judged by looking for a story in it. Dapat this is very clear. Lahat ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi nyo pwedeng gamitin yun sa experimental because that is following the 3-act structure, yung the usual na natin, ina-expect natin, mas maraming gumagawa. Pero ang experimental film, kaya nga madalas hindi siya na-appreciate ng karamihan. Kasi unang-una, expected, walang kwento. Walang main conflict or inciting incident. Tapos magka-climax at ending. No, hindi siya ganun. Iba siya. Wala siyang kwento as we know it like that. An experimental film works like poetry. It's if you have something, maybe we can compare it with novel and short story versus poem. Alam nyo, may pinagkaiba yung poem dun sa dalawa. So, yung experimental film, mas poetic din siguro siya. Parang gano'n. So, ultimately, it translates yung emotions to the audiovisual medium. And siguro kung may 3 words, yun nga, yung nabanggit ko kanina, emotion, sensation, experience. Makikita nyo sa mga short films na experimental, pag pinanood mo siya, hindi para hanapan mo ng kwento, kundi sit through it, feel the experience the film, kung anong emotion yung maibigay niya sa'yo, anong senses. Minsan may mga short films na gumagamit ng non-traditional filmmaking techniques, o minsan gumagawa pa ng mga may certain patterns sa shots, etc. na hindi pwedeng gamitan ng logical na may storya. Ang importante doon, panoorin mo, ano ang naramdaman mo, ano yung sensations that you felt, ano, natuwa ka ba or what, nagalit ka ba, and dig deep inside you how that translated to you, how that impacted you. So it's more on that, hindi about telling a story as we know it sa narrative. Magkaiba talaga siya. So it's really the experience. Okay? So yun yung sa ano ko siguro, kahit really short about experimental short films. Then you have documentary short film. Sa documentaries, of course, it's a different ball game also, no? So it's important that you have an objective. Para saan ba to? Okay? Bakit mo to ginagawa? You have films like Aswang, di ba? So, ano bang purpose? Anong objective? You create a framework kasi in general, walang script ang documentary. Sometimes you can. Depende sa workflow, depende sa subject at sa tema, etc. Pero usually hanggang ano yan, mga 3-act treatment lang, ganyan. O kaya siguro, not necessarily a screenplay, but sequence guide, ganyan. So, you have to do research, a lot of research. And anong gagawin mong klase ng research? Ano yung methodology? It may sound very academic, pero it sounds academic in words, pero yun lang talaga yun. Kailangan mo ng methodology. Like, ano ba? Interviews? Magi-interview ka ng subject mo. So, research and methodology na yun, di ba? Yun. So, meron kang framework na pag gagawin. And then, anong method? Puro ba interview? Meron akong alam na documentary, recently, pinalabas sa CCP, yung Tao Po. Pinagsama niya ang theater and film into this documentary film ni May Paner, wherein yung mga victims ng certain crimes, meron siyang sinabi tungkol doon. Tapos, instead na yung straight interview ng mga tao, ng subjects, siya yung nagsasalita. Tapos, very, siya, parang may pagka-monologue. Tapos, may ginawa siyang mga styles. It's very different from the usual. And it was brought about by the pandemic also. So, ayun, iba yung methodology niya, hindi siya yung straight up interview. So it just sounds a little academic, pero it's really just articulating that. Pero yun talaga yung ginagawa sa docu. And then it's important also you have a statement as a director. So maybe you can make an abstract or what's your filmmakers? Ano ba talaga yung gusto mong sabihin? Again, importante yung mga ito because usually wala nga script. Kasi paano mo yung script? Film mo nga yung tao, yung susundan mo yung tao, diba? The film is happening as you film it. So, 3-act treatment. So, yan yung pinaka-structure. So, siguro, para madaling maintindihan, para siyang 3-act structure mo kung ano yung mangyayari, ano yung mga focus mo, para hindi ka rin masyadong kalat pagka magtatanong ka na sa subject mo, ano yung gusto mong makuha. Kumbaga, kailangan mo pa rin ng structure. Yan. And then, the mode of storytelling. So, you have to balance between information and sensation because at the end of the day, it's still a film. Okay? So, ang difference lang sa documentary, it's not fiction. It's coming from real life. You're filming people. It's happening in reality. No? So, ngayon, you have to balance that with the film language, the use of film language. And then, ito, one thing that I learned from some documentary film mentors, yung tinatawag na impact campaign. So, after nito, alam din natin ang documentary, hindi siya kumikita kahit full-length pa siya ng katulad ng commercial films. Diba? Lalo ito, documentary short film. So, pwede rin siyang gamitin ito yung tinatawag na impact campaign. It's like these are advocacy initiatives and calls to action na kung ano yung objective mo, anong purpose mo, para saan ba itong film na ito, bakit mo ito ginagawa. Para ma-achieve mo yon, you create an impact campaign, you partner with schools, you partner with, for example, if it's very feminist, diba, you partner with certain organizations, if it's something about education, something about education and the youth, ganun din. So, yung magkakaroon ka ng impact campaign in order for more people to know about it. And at some point, it does happen na nagkakaroon ng lobbying even sa let's say sa Congress na parang tutulungan kasi papapanood itong film mo, ganyan. So, it can be really, parang advocacy mo talaga. So, yun yung isa sa mga pwedeng gawin sa documentary shorts, even documentary shorts. Ayun. So, ngayon, tinanong ko kanina, story is king, do you agree? If you were to ask me naman, it's, of course, story is very important. But I think more than the story in a film, it's the storytelling. It's not just the story. Kasi when you say story, yan, yung script, sa screenplay, yung storya. Pero, hindi lang siya nagtatapos doon. Lahat nung tungkol sa film language, cinematography, production design, acting, editing, 'di ba? Color grading, lahat 'yan, musical scoring, part 'yan ng storytelling. And for me, that's the ultimate goal, good storytelling in order to craft a really good film, whether that's short or full length. Yan. So lastly, of course, maraming ways to do it, but let me just reiterate this part na ito mas managerial, administrative side, logistics side, no? Sabi ko nga, dapat may balance nung sa creative and logistics. Ito lang example, no? So, really simple example na kailangan marunong ka mag-organize, marunong ka, may timetable ka. Kasi kung hindi ka aabot, baka mamaya mag-prolong, you know. So, dapat may projection ka kung ito ba ay mangyayari. Or sometimes, yung ginagawa na iba Gantt chart. So, hindi na nilalagyan ng date ng time, kumbaga, yung month and year. Pero may Gantt chart. Pero ako mas gusto ko yung ganito kasi parang, pag sabi, oh my God, mag-August na. Yung something like that. So, pwede mong i-lay down dito kung ano yung mga gagawin para meron kang fina-follow. Kasi pagka hindi mo finalo, ang hirap. Ang hirap. Baka mag-extend ka, hindi ka matapos kagad. Lalo na kung you're beating a deadline. Diba? Ayun, yun lang naman. So, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think now we can open the floor to questions. Yan.
Hi, Miss Rian. Maraming salamat po sa presentation ninyo. Sobrang halaga na walk through nyo kami sa behind the scenes, entire process din ng paggawa mismo ng film. Sobrang important din to para sa ating mga viewers. Very interested sila ngayon tungkol sa filmmaking. At sana, through your talk, mas naging interested sila sa paggawa ng filmmaking, art of filmmaking, and sa short film especially. So ngayon po, may mga viewers tayo na nagtanong naman din mula sa Zoom at Facebook Live. So sa mga audience natin, sige, pwede pa kayo magtanong. Tanong nga kayo through Zoom Q&A section at sa Facebook comment section. Ayan, Miss Rian, simulan po natin with a light question lang muna. Kasi, ano lang din, parang sa proseso na ibinahagi ninyo sa amin, sa proseso ng filmmaking, ano po yung paborito ninyo at ano tingin niyo yung pinaka-challenging naman para sa inyo?
Actually, kasi very technical akong tao. Talagang pinaka-gusto ko shoot. So, kahit nung bata pa ako, talagang cameras, yung mahilig ako sa camera talaga. Since maliit ako, lagi ako yung taga-picture nung bata ako. So, cinematography talaga yung pinaka gusto kong part, yung nag-shoot talaga. Although, alam ko talaga, napakahalaga din ng pagsusulat. Hindi mawawala yon. Tsaka yung iba pang aspeto like editing. Pero kung talagang papipiliin ako, parang yung emotionally, mas gusto ko talaga yung proseso ng pag-shoot. Na sa totoo lang, dahil sa nangyari ngayong pandemic, napakahirap. Kasi ako touchy ako I mean, kinakausap mo yung actor, hindi siya pwedeng chikahin mo lang na, ano yun may rapport yun na nasanay ka, na nag-i-interact kayo. Tapos ngayon, nakamas, you know, yung gano'n, napakahirap talaga. Pero yun, nami-miss ko yung gano'n. Ayun.
Ano naman po yung pinaka-challenging naman para inyo doon? At bakit
pinaka-challenging? Yun din! Shoot! Yun ang pinaka-magastos. Yun ang very sensitive sa mga bagay. Pag umulan, pag biglang nangyari sa akin, ondoy nag-shoot ako So, 5 araw kung hindi nakauwi. So, yun din yung pinaka-challenging. Siguro yun, mahilig din ako sa challenges din talaga siguro. Kasi, pag halimbawa, ang screenplay, ako lang yung involved. Kaya hindi siya, challenging siya, pero ako lang yung involved kung ako yung nagsusulat. Sa editing, 2 lang kami, 3 lang or 4 lang kami. Sa shoot, maliit na yung 30 kami. So you're handling that much, and sometimes talagang may mga pagsubok na hindi mo ini-expect, beyond your control. So yun yung challenge doon. So I think yun ang pinaka-challenging sa lahat.
Okay, so mukhang ang dami po kasi talagang pinagdadaanan ng film, no? Sa paggawa mismo ng film. Kahit
akala nila
Oo,
ganun.
akala nila simple lang. Lalo na sa panahon ng digital, di ba? Parang akala nila shoot and post, ganyan. Pero ang dami po lalo na sa binahagi ninyo. At talagang, yun, ang daming effort na inilagay. Pero despite, dahil nga po madaming effort, meron pa ding mga tao na hindi nila alam na ganito yung nangyayari. Kaya maraming perspective or perception na ang short film ay hindi film. May mga ganun po kasi sana yung mga tao din sa full-length film . So ano po, o kaya nagsasabi na pag short film, nag-short film yan kasi low budget. Ngayon ang tanong ko po, bakit po kaya may ganitong perception? At ano pa po ba yung mga iba pang perception ng mga tao tungkol sa short film na tingin ninyo ay kailangan ding itama naman? Ayun po.
Unang-una sa lahat, kasi masanay tayo sa full length. Lalo na kung hindi ka, I think, film literate in the sense na hindi ka exposed. Hindi ka exposed sa mga short films. Like, kasi ngayon mas exposed na ang mga kabataan kasi nagiging part siya ng school requirements or sometimes school mga sa modules, ganyan. I think ang napapansin ko, mas hindi siya na-appreciate nung hindi na-expose dito. And karaniwan dito, yung mas ibang generation. Parang, ay hindi, mas gusto ko na yung ganito. Lalo na ang mga short film dahil sa limited resources, may chance na hindi kilala yung artista. So meron tayong ganong concept na for mass consumption, dapat viable yung actor, kilala, sikat. Kasi ako mismo sa family ko, napapansin ko yun na sinabi, sinong artista? Ay, sino yun? Well, sikat siya sa theater pero hindi siya sikat sa o kaya sikat na ngayon pero dati hindi pa sikat. Like, gano'n. Napakahirap siyang ipaintindi. Like, halimbawa, naririnig ko, mga kakilala ko na, halimbawa, kapamilya ko, hindi naman mahilig sa ganito, mga art films, ganyan. Hindi nila naiintindihan, parang nare-repel sila. Nakikita ko ngayon since na-democratize ng digital filmmaking ang paggawa ng pelikula, meron gumagawa ng palatable din dun sa mga tao na hindi naman mas into art films. Ayun, hindi naman dapat ikahon ang short film dun sa mga isinesend sa film festivals. It's a form of storytelling and each one of us, iba-iba tayo ng mga gusto. There will always be an audience. So, siguro magandang ipaintindi yun sa iba. Pero nakikita kong advantage ngayon kasi medyo di ba nga, fast-paced tayo. Yung iba, na-appreciate na yung short film sa YouTube. Kasi na-expose tayo sa mga YouTube, mga videos. Of course, ang daming klase ng videos na makikita mo sa YouTube. Pero minsan, napapansin ko, nagiging advantage siya kasi nagkakaroon nga ng literacy for short film. Mas na-appreciate na siya na hindi kailangan super sikat na artista all the time para lang panoorin mo. They are touched by these stories already na sometimes less than 5 minutes long. So, I think yung exposure natin sa ngayon, like sa streaming, ganyan, magpa-pave way. Although makikita natin sa Netflix, di ba, hindi sila geared sa short films, sa full length pa rin. Makikita mo yung mga short films sa certain platforms, like sa 𝘵𝘂 or yung mga specific na YouTube channels. Masarap siyang manood ng ganon, lalo na kung na-expose ka na. Siguro more on encouraging people and through film festivals or even events like these, it allows us to open their minds to these short film and talagang sa ngayon ang dami, kahit yung anak ko ilang taon lang yun, nakakagawa na siya sa pinopost na discover niya sa cellphone, magpo-post ka. So yung concept na ginagawa namin sa film school dati na shoot edit, ginagawa niya. Tapos nagma-magic pa siya na nag-a-appear, disappear siya. Tapos na-realize niya na kailangan naka-tripod yung cellphone. Parang hindi umuuga. I mean, what is the future if we have the youth doing this, di ba? 5 years old lang yun, di pa kami magbasa. So ayun, siguro it's more of letting them find exposure to these films that can help make short films more viable to different kinds of audiences. Ayun.
Okay. Ang galing po ng anak na niya. At a very young
Nagulat
age.
ako Parang sabi ko, magic. Sabi niya, nawala siya. So sabi ko, oh my God. Ginagawa namin to sa film school. Yung mga tricks. Oo.
Ang galing, ang galing. Kasi,
Oo.
syempre po kasi diba social media, like, dyan din yung, mga various nga po platforms na sabi nyo, like YouTube, vids. So, ayun po. Actually, even hindi ko nga po sure do you consider yung mga ipinopost sa, like, kung may film na ginagawa sa TikTok, is that something na, I mean,
alam mo, yan,
consider.
it's very new It's like in film theory, di ba? Parang, hindi mo masabi na completely ganito siya dahil napakaaga pa. There was a time na nung silent film era, debatable, is film an art form? It's not an art form. It's just a technology. It's a fad. It's just plain recording of, this, and then that's not art. That's not fine arts. That's not theater. May ganun siya dati, di ba? Ngayon, early days ng TikTok, I have this feeling that somehow because of the platform, there will be a rise of a sort of film movement that will eventually become parang TikTok style or TikTok na type of unang-una na yung aspect ratio na instead na pag ganon, parang so yung sa palagay ko darating yung point ng evolution niya na it will become an art form in itself, hindi lang siya fad na it depends on who's doing it, who's crafting it. Ngayon maaga pa para sabihin siya na isang yes, you can claim, pero I am positive that there's this possibility talaga. In the same way as yung mga short films na dati compared sa ngayon, nag-iiba rin yung paraan ng pagkukwento because technology somehow in some way dictates what you can do, 'di ba? So yun nga, technology, sana hindi tayo yung slaves ng technology, kundi tayo yung nag-utilize ng goodness na makukuha natin sa technologies.
Agree. Very exciting po yung mga possibilities talaga sa technology din talaga, lalo na for filmmaking. Especially that it's very accessible. And speaking of accessibility din po, kasi may mga nagtatanong kapag ba gumawa ka po ba ng short film, does it mean that it's already automatically low budget? Are all short films low budget? And related din po doon, pati ba yung bayad? Ito po yung itanong sa Facebook, pati ba yung bayad sa director, sa mga artista, sa mga crew, ganyan, sa cast, is it all low budget? Yun po, yun ang tanong from Facebook.
In general, mas low budget siya kasi especially in the third world country as ours. Because usually ang gumagawa ng short films either sariling pera o nanghihingi kung kani-kanina. Really happens sa mga kamag-anak, ganyan, thesis, ganyan. Tapos, yung iba, meron ding mga grants o kaya may nagbibigay ng money pero hindi enough. Hindi talaga enough. Ngayon, sineswerte ka minsan, marami kang nakuhang grants, like 2 grants, so makakapagbigay ka pa. Ngayon, babalik tayo dun sa sinabi ko kanina na if alam nyo na hindi binayaran yung mga tao dun sa film na yun. Pero, I was upfront. Dun kasi yun kasi chicken and egg yan Paano ka gagawa ng pelikula? Wala kang pera. Paano ka magkakapera? Wala kang di ba? Parang, ang daming issues. Tapos, hindi lahat merong chance na makakuha ng grants. Hindi naman lahat mayaman. Pero, yes, may limited resources kang i-face. Pero, tingnan nyo ngayon, cellphone nyo pwede na mag-shoot. Tapos, alam mo ang film language, pwede namang kahit hindi ka magrenta ng ilaw. Again, parameters, wag ka mag-shoot sa gabi. Di ba? Maghanap ka ng kwento, mag-shoot ka sa umaga. Sa umaga, maganda yung sinag ng araw. Doon ka mag-shoot sa may pinto or sa may bintana. So, totoo, low budget siya, pero hindi mo makikitang low budget yun sa pelikula kung maayos mong ginawa. Bakit siya low budget? Kasi walang businessman in general na mag-fund doon kasi wala namang return of investment. Ang commercial films, kaya yan hundreds of millions of dollars, for example, sa Hollywood, hindi dahil marami lang silang pera, alam nila babalik sa kanila. paano babalik yung sa short films? Oh, 'di ba? So, unless ang short film makers, for example, mag-band together, tapos for some reason come up with an omnibus film or anthology film na magmukhang full length sa isang tapos, pwede kung pwede. Pero, ang reason bakit siya limited resources, walang nagfa-fund. Or kung may nagfa-fund, limited din yung pag-funding. Like ako, may government funding ako, pero bawal gamitin yun for food expenses. Ako yung mag-shell out nun unless makakuha ko ng, ng tulong. So, yung mga ganun, wag nating isipin na yung limitations ay hindrance or exploiting, kasi there's a big difference between exploiting and transparency and being genuinely telling people what to do and how to do it. Kasi ako ay naniniwala na the more limited you become, the more creative you can get. It's not an excuse. Just because you're limited, hindi ka na didiskarte. Ang masama lang, tatapa ka sa ibang tao. Tatapakan mo yung paa ng ibang tao. So, again, babalik tayo dun sa concept na sinasabi, exploitative. Marami akong naririnig na ganyan. Pero, like for example, sa mga short films ko, like yung mga earlier short films ko, may grant. Ang style namin, kung anong bayad sa director na honorarium. Honorarium, hindi talaga Actually, kahit sabi mo ako yung director, technically, naglagay ako ng 500, halimbawa, or 1,000, or 5,000. Pero, hindi ko talaga nakuha yun kasi nilabas ko pa rin yun. Part pa rin. Hindi mo talaga makukuha. Usually, mag-shell out ka. Kung magkano yung sa akin, same sa DP, same sa PA. Yun yung style ko. So, sabi ko kasi, everyone in a film, working on a film is a filmmaker. So, kung sino man, pati yung utility person ko, kung magkano ako, magkano din siya. Yun din yung amount. So, ganun yung setup namin. Tapos, transparent. At pag tumawag ka sa artista, kausapin mo, ito lang budget namin. Pag hindi pwede, ayaw niya, okay lang. Naiintindihan ko. Ang una kong pinapakita, script. So, kasi, minsan, iba yung value nung you want to create more than what you can financially give. Let's admit it, we are in a third world country. Hindi tayo katulad sa Hollywood. The thing is, pag hindi ka talaga nag-pursue, hindi like-minded people yung kasama mo, hindi kayo nagkakaintindihan, magkakaproblema. Pero kung honest kayo sa isa't isa, sinabi mo, ito lang yung kaya, tapos ito yung kaya naming ibigay, walang problema. Unless dumating tayo sa point na talagang may funding for short films. Diba? Na decent amounts. Yun. So, that's how I can answer that.
Okay. So, very important nga talaga na mag-set ng expectations. At para sa mga tao, talagang pag gusto mo, may paraan.
May paraan, oo. Huwag ka lamang ng iba. Huwag ka lamang exploit.
Tama. So, sana na-inspire yung mga natin. Kasi isa nga po yun sa mga madalas iniisip ng tao, yung budget. Pag sabing film, gagawa ng film, parang ang mahal, ganyan. So, tama
nila, ito kasi yun eh. Halimbawa, 10 kayo, ganun lang kakonti. 10 yung pakakainin mo ng breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Yun pa lang may budget na yun. Pinapunta mo yun. Ito yung sa akin, kahit pa nag-pro bono, like a big star, sabi ko, meron akong budget honorary, ayaw tanggapin. Free na lang daw. Sabi ko, thank you po. Pero yun nga, sabi ko, please, I insist, yung panggas, paano na po, bigay ko na po sa inyo yung panggas. Kasi lahat, yung kumbaga, yun naman, libre na nga. Tapos, di ba, yung pagkain, dapat maayos yung pagkain. Tapos maayos yung pamasahe o kung may panggas. Yung gano'n, kumbaga, alam nila na makatao ka, hindi mo sila ginagamit lang, kundi together, you have a single vision in mind, hoping that you can tell a good story for your target audience. Diba?
Oo, maganda yon yung good story, talagang important po yun. Na, din po, speaking of good story, gusto ko lang din balikan yung sinabi ninyo earlier na parang yung paggawa ng film ay, there are crafting lies to show the truth. So, dun po punta po sa tanong na yon na parang, sa panahon po ng ngayon, ano po ba ang halaga ng pagkakaroon ng films or short films dito sa lipunan natin ngayon?
Nako, napaka-accessible ng pelikula ngayon. Let's take the case of the pandemic and then what happened to Netflix. Statistically, ang laki nung ginump ng kung sino yung mga nag-a-access na mga pelikula. So whether full length or short, of course, hindi lahat may Netflix. May YouTube libre as long as you have internet. There are ways to find these wonderful stories. So, dahil dito sa pandemya, ang nangyari, parang mas nagkaroon ng parang malaking audience kasi nasa bahay, ano ba yung kaya mong gawin, 'di ba? Sabi nga nila, pag nanood ka ng pelikula, parang natatransport ka sa bagong world. I mean, ako nung bata ko, napanood ko yung Lord of the Rings, pinanood ko uli ngayon, my God. Iba pa rin, parang napanood mo na, alam mo na yung ending, pero you still suspend your disbelief. Somehow, if you're watching the right films, you're depressed right now. Nakakulong ka. Nakakulong tayo sa bahay, hindi na yung dating normal. Manood ka ng something na makaka-fulfill sa'yo. Kaya nga ang daming mga, di ba, yung mga Korean films na mga series, etc. Kasi, doon tayo uma-anchor ngayon kasi we only have so much. What can we do at home? Hindi tayo makapanood sa sinihan, di ba? So, another thing nga sa docu, kasi of course I know that some stats, tumaas ng sobra ang nanonood bigla sa Netflix ng documentaries. So ibig sabihin yung mga tao nanonood na dati hindi. So ibig sabihin ang mga tao ngayon nag-e-explore. Kasi syempre, yeah, you're always fed the same format, the same kind of films, the same stories, iba lang minsan yung kung sinong gumawa at sino yung nakikita sa screen, pero pag naghanap din sila ng bago, 'di ba? So dahil doon, kahit ngayong mga TikTok, ganyan, I'm not saying all of them are really, something that I agree with, but yeah, again, it's the potential of the technology and not abuse it or use it in not so good light. So I think really yung mga ganitong platforms, lalo na sa digital at sa online, malaking bagay ito para sa atin because sabi ko nga kanina, it's human nature na we are storytellers and story audiences. 'Di ba? Pag nakita kami ng friend ko, classmate ko sa UP, na matagal ko nang hindi nakikita. Kumusta ka na? Ano na nangyari sa iyo? Magkwento ka naman. 'Yun yung dahilan kung bakit tayo sa pelikula ganon kasi kwento siya. Mapapansin mo rin, ewan ko kung napapansin nyo sa homily, ng mga pare, may mga anecdotes. Yung mga speakers, pagka may speech sila, magkukwento yun ng isang something na nangyari. Style yun para ma-hook yung tao. And yun ang ginagawa sa films. So, it's really something that, is very close to our hearts. Ayan.
They're very relatable talaga pag nagkwento ka na. Yun yung maganda talaga.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oo.
sige po. Last question na lang po, So, ngayon po, paano po kaya mas ma-heighten pa yung appreciation ng mga tao sa iba't ibang uri pa ng pelikula? Yung aside from what is currently accessible na napapanood natin, ano pa po ma-heighten yung appreciation?
You mean heighten appreciation sa paggawa ng pelikula or pag-consume?
Yes.
Ano ba? Dahil sa technology is very accessible, it has really democratized filmmaking, and I really feel na everyone can find ways to tell their own stories. Hindi kailangan ng art films all the time. Lalo na ngayon, 'di ba? Lalo na sa mga kabataan, ang daming mga platforms. Masarap siyang explore. Basta yung balance lang. Like for example, sa anak ko, hindi pwedeng all the time ginagawa niya yun. Kasi, 5 years old yung mata, ganyan. So, limited lang. Wag, dapat alam nyo how to balance. Now, important ang human experience. Hindi pwedeng puro gadgets tayo, ganyan. So, it's also important na doon ka kumuha ng mga storya. Importante na makarelate yung mga tao, at least your target audience. You can only please certain audience for a particular film. Dapat alam mo na may niche ka. Yun lang yung para doon. Para hindi ka naman masad na bakit hindi ma-appreciate ng karamihan. Hindi kasi talagang yung klase ng kwento mo is para sa ganito. You have to accept that. Ngayon, again, as storytellers and story audiences, napakaganda na sana laging may mag-promote ng maayos na discourse. Kasi I really feel like, yeah, you have stories to tell, pero pagka tapos nun, hindi na pinag-usapan, walang effect. kumbaga walang ano sa tao, hindi na siya ano, ibig sabihin it's just gonna be buried and wala na siya. Whereas kung may healthy discussion, civil discussions, napopromote mo yung art, you become more literate about you learn more about the film language, and masarap siya sa pakiramdam, may fulfillment both sa storyteller and sa story audience. So sana yun, gamitin natin itong art form na ito hindi lamang para sa, walang masama na gamitin siya sa entertainment, but be responsible because it's a privilege to tell a story. But more than that, let's use this to make a statement. Whether it's an outlet for us as storytellers because we're feeling this way, especially during pandemic, for example, or it's something that you want, there's something inside you that you want to tell. And people will appreciate that, especially your target audience. Ayun.
Okay, so very important nga po talaga na mapag-usapan. Tulad ng ginagawa natin ngayon. Kaya po maraming salamat, Miss Rianne, sa pagsagot ng mga tanong ng ating mga live viewers, sa pagbahagi ninyo ng ng proseso ngayon tungkol sa paggawa ng pelikula. Very important po talaga siya ngayon. Para kami nagkaroon ng quick lesson tungkol sa paggawa ng pelikula. Ngayon naman po, para formal natin isa yung ating Q&A session, siguro last, na lang po, meron pa po ba kayong last statements or concluding statement para sa participants natin?
Okay, sa akin lang, sa panahon ngayon, sana ma-appreciate nating lahat how art is part of our lives. Some would tend to say that, we're not as essential, etc. Syempre sa artist masakit yon, yung sasabihin ka na hindi ka importante pero nakikinig ka ng music, nanonood ka ng pelikula. So, sana pahalagahan yon. Akala nila, yan 6 minutes lang. Akala siguro na 6 minutes lang din ginawa. Ginawa yan ng 1 buwan. Hindi kasama dyan yung paggawa ng script. Diba? 6 minutes lang yan. Pero inabot ka ng, actually, parang technically 3 months. Yun, for a 6-minuter. Yung iba, akala nila ganun lang kasimpleng mag-shoot. Ang isang scene, inaabot ng 1 oras, minsan 2 oras pa o kalahating araw. Tapos, minsan, itatapon lang namin yun sa edit kasi we know the storytelling doesn't need it. And we only figure it out during the time na nag-e-edit. So, sana bilang respeto sa mga gumagawa ng kahit anong art, hindi lang sa pelikula, yun, pahalagahan nyo na hindi yung parang lagi na lang libre, ganyan, sabihin, ay, ang mahal naman, hindi nila alam magkano ba ang camera. May depreciation yan, di ba? Tapos, maniningil sa graphic artist or sa filmmaker na, okay na yung 5,000, mag-edit, yung kuryente ng tao, etc. Naiintindihan namin na yung ibang tao hindi naiintindihan. Kaya nga through these things that like I have the opportunity to explain it to others, hindi siya ganun kasimple. It requires cost. In the same way as we are professionals, we are paid a certain amount per day. In the same way as a lawyer is paid a certain amount per day because pinag-aralan niya yun, pinagtrabahuhan niya yun. Ang doktor ganun din. Professionals din naman, for example, ang mga filmmakers, ang mga artists. So, ang painter, di ba? Sabi nila, bakit ganun lang yun? Tapos, what? 50,000? Ganyan. Hindi siya ganun kasimple na, hindi siya, very talaga siya. It requires open mind that pinag-aralan to ng mga tao. Yung ginawa to, mas mahal siya, pero hindi dahil sa mabilis siyang gumawa at maganda yung gawa niya kasi may experience na siya. 'Di ba? So sana mas maintindihan natin yung klase ng minsan hinihingi naming respeto sa mga artists, hindi lang again sa pelikula, na kami rin nag-invest, nag-capitalize para maibigay sa inyo kung ano yung nagugustuhan yung napapanood nyo, naririnig nyo, nakikita nyo. So sana yon yung appreciation doon because lahat naman yun essential. Because yung self-realization natin, sabi nga dun sa, di ba, may parang, yung hierarchy of needs. Totoo naman, syempre, health, etc. Pero we don't end there. We're not robots. We're human beings. And human beings, if you see, even when a baby starts to, when a baby, comes out, art muna, hindi science. Tinuturo ko, hindi math. Yung art, it's human nature, it's storytelling. You tell stories to your kid using books. Doon tayo kinraft, doon tayo lumaki, bago pa tayo doon sa mga more technical na, So, sana ma-appreciate nyo rin yung art that way. So, yun lang siguro yung best na naiisip ko ngayon na pwedeng i-share. Final word.
Okay. Ayan, salamat po, no? Tama yan, Miss Rian. Maraming salamat po ulit, Miss Rian, sa lahat, at mula po sa lahat ng bumubuo ng NPDC, taos puso po kaming nagpapasalamat sa pagbabahagi ng inyong kaalaman tungkol sa short film at sa kaugnayan nito sa sining, kultura at social realities ng ating bansa. At para naman sa participants natin, sana ay nahikayat tayo na tingnan ng Philippine art forms, lampas sa art consumption at upang maging critical at active audience din tayo. At sa puntong ito, igagawad po natin ang Certificate of Appreciation para kay Miss Rian. So ito po ang Certificate of Appreciation. So National Parks Development Committee and the Department of Tourism award the Certificate of Appreciation to Ms. Rianne Hill Soriano for sharing her valuable insights and knowledge on the webinar, The Art of the Short Film, given this 28th of February, 2022 via Zoom video conference. This is signed by our Executive Director, Ms. Cecilia Renzana Romero. Ayan po. So muli po maraming salamat, Ms. Rianne, at sa ating participants sa Zoom at Facebook platforms. Sana ay pareho tayo natuto at nag-enjoy sa ating Park Conversations episode ngayong umaga. Ayan, magkita-kita po tayo ulit sa Park Conversations. Ako ulit si Mia Lauengco. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Thank you po.
Bye. Salamat. Bye-bye. Ingat kayong lahat. Bye-bye.
Para makakuha ng digital certificate, pakisagutan po ang maikling survey na matatagpuan sa Zoom chat box at Facebook live comment section. Makatutulong ito upang mapagbuti pa namin sa NPDC ang kalidad ng aming mga programa at proyekto. Paki-follow kami sa aming social media accounts upang maging updated sa iba pang makabuluhang programa at proyekto. Para sa Facebook, paki-like ang aming Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Para sa Instagram, paki-follow ang npdc.ph. Para sa Twitter, npdc_ph. At para sa YouTube, mag-subscribe sa National Parks Development Committee. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media.